John asked me to come in and talk about, you call him John? I don't know what to call him. Is that good?
John's fine. More than fine.
Just kind of from my perspective, where things were at today in the world of games. And I'm going to reach a little bit beyond games, maybe into what I would call interactivity. And full disclosure, while I've spent a good deal of my career making games for consoles and PC, things like that, a lot of my energy in the last few years has been spent around bringing interactive entertainment to platforms like Xbox Live, as well as I spent the better part of last year working on the next generation of what, if Microsoft were to make another box, what that very well might be. And I've signed so many documents that I'm pretty sure if I said the wrong words, I would just spontaneously combust right here in front of you. So if that happens, you'll know exactly. Well, that is a non-intuitive device.
Yeah, it really is.
Can I
so
get rid of my note here with that?
Well, if you want, I'll click.
No.
Just down on that.
Okay. Oh, Jesus. All right. That pretty much says it all. Actually, given. Oh.
I feel so much better. I've fought it.
There we go. This is horrible. It's so bad they haven't even put the name of the manufacturer on it. They're so embarrassed. So I'm not going to touch on everything. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the world out there, but I'm going to touch on the things that are meaningful and that I tend to spend some time thinking about. So there's a fact which is quite interesting. More people than ever, by a wide margin, are playing games or video games than ever in history. And a lot of that is because of mobile. If you include iPad, a lot of that was in the broadening of PC gaming, things like World of Warcraft, things like Club Penguin, things that brought new audiences into consoles, into computers, and now into mobile. Mobile's growing. It continues to grow, and it grows in new and weird and bizarre ways. And I'm going to touch a little bit separately on mobile, but compared to the current generation of consoles, I mean, for the most part, are pretty stagnant. There's not a lot of innovation on consoles. The cost of manufacturing a game for a console is so ridiculously high. The number of people it takes to make a game that you would spend $50 on, you know, pretty hard pressed to get out for under $40 million in development costs, with a lot of stuff skewing way above $100 million right now. So the big publishers, the Activisions, the EAs, and whoever else is left today, I'm not sure, you got to read the newspaper or check the blogs to see who's still in business, but they don't make a lot of new bets. You know, they want to give you the new Call of Duty, they want to give you the new FIFA, they want to give you, well, the new reimagined, oh God, which one is it? It's not Medal of Honor anymore, it's EA's.
Battlefield?
Battle, thank you. So you're not seeing a lot of imagination. I actually put this little guy up here, Skylanders Giants, because that Skylander was a real surprise to me in the console world. I had a chance to talk to the people at Activision that were behind it and got it going. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with what Skylanders is, but in basic concept, it's a typical game that exists, kind of a young skewing action adventure game, but you get toys with it. And the toys you actually place on a portal, and the characters of the toy then appear into the game. And it's key to the progression and the flow of the game, the idea of buying more toys, going farther in the game, having new experiences unlocked. So it's not just the character appearing, it's the traits the character has affect the game, the way you experience a level gets affected by the characters you bring in. It's pretty well thought out, and it's pretty well executed. One of the cool things that I didn't know was folks at Activision said, well, we decided to do this. We decided not to work with a toy company, which is pretty interesting. And I said, well, how do you do that? How do you know anything about toys? And they said, well, we know about design. We know how to create characters. And we've also manufactured about a zillion plastic guitars. And we've also manufactured, you know, little fake plastic DJ sets and keyboards, and we've been doing that in the Far East for a while. So we actually feel pretty confident about doing that. So what might seem like a huge leap as to why a games company all of a sudden thought it could become a toy company, which it has. It sells to Toys R Us. Its stuff appears in the toy aisles. Is pretty cool. But other than that, I'm not seeing a lot of innovation on consoles. Too high risk, too much expense, and audiences really aren't that interested to try new titles to spend $50 on. So next gen, we saw the announcement of PlayStation 4. I don't know about you, wasn't really exciting for me. I didn't understand what the value proposition was. I think they're being a little guarded, but I don't know, it just seemed like more. Like, you know, more of what we already have, a little more visual definition, a little more convenience, a little more speed. I didn't understand it. Like, I always see things as a user, as a consumer, and there was not a single thing said that made me think, wow, I really can't wait for that. Bless you. I'm not sure that's the right way to do it, but I've seen people do it. So the next gen consoles, we expect Microsoft to maybe announce something in the near future. Nintendo, who knows? Where they did such an amazing job with the Wii, broadening to bigger and bigger and bigger audiences, they seem to have kind of slowed down and stumbled a bit. And the other part, which is something I've spent a lot of time in, is consoles are really becoming entertainment portals for the living room. I worked in a group that was formed for that purpose at Microsoft called Xbox Live Studios. And when we started, something like 97% of the activity on Xbox Live was playing games. And a huge percentage of that, a number I don't think I'm allowed to say, was around Call of Duty. So in theory, you could think of Xbox Live as the Call of Duty platform. There were other games, there were sports games, there were driving games, there was Halo, and depending if there was a new Halo, that got a lot of playtime. But essentially, that's what it was. And we set out to see, well, can we get people to use Xbox Live to consume entertainment in their living room other than games? And there was a lot of innovation, a lot of experimentation. I don't know how many of you saw 1 vs. 100. It was a live game show that was done on Xbox Live. Not the best game show in the world. It was actually already off the air on TV, but they had, and this was part of my getting involved, they had numerous times over 100,000 people playing together live. And not like playing Call of Duty at the same time, where you're being instanced into a group of people. This is literally 100,000 people playing the same game at the same time, which I think was pretty amazing. And it was an interesting opportunity to develop that, but that's not something that Microsoft is chasing at the moment. I can do this. Oh yeah. So, just talking, this is like a gag, isn't it?
Yeah, I wish it was.
Stupefy the guy that's supposed to know about interfaces. All right, well, it's worked. Come on, give me the real controller. Seriously. Okay. So some of the disruptions we've seen recently, you can see a little bit of the stuff I'm talking about that we did in Xbox Live Studios with HBO Go, with Netflix. ESPN was a big area of innovation that I really enjoyed. And what we set out to do there was to create, the core of it was to create something called My Sports Center. And unfortunately, we live in Canada, so we don't get to see this, but take my word for it. And that is, as we watch Sports Center, as sports fans, to get our daily sports updates, we all have sports we like, we have sports we like a lot, and we have sports we don't like. And I don't know about you, but this is something I watch every day. It's a half an hour of my time, and sometimes I fall asleep, so it repeats, and I watch it many times while I'm sleeping. But I don't like stock car racing. And until the playoffs, I don't like baseball. And I like hockey a lot. And some days I like basketball, and I like MotoGP, and I like action sports. And I wanted my own sports center that reflected my interests. So that's what we built. And so what it does is, it's more not about how you behave, it's about what you choose. And you choose the sports you like, you can choose teams you like, you can choose athletes you like. And it reassembles and serves up the available highlights in a way that it talks to you on a personal level. So that's kind of cool and disruptive. We did a similar thing around UFC. The idea of bringing a whole new kind of live pay-per-view event around a UFC fight where you and your friends can take out your mobile devices and you can download the app and you can choose who you think is going to win every fight, how they're going to win. And you compete against your friends in the room and your friends outside of the room, so you're actually accruing points and you're competing. And then you can actually access content where fight may be coming up and I've never heard of that fighter. And you can watch a little bit about them to learn. So disruptive, yes, because at the time I left Microsoft, probably about a year ago, the last month I was there, 57% of the time on Xbox Live was spent not gaming. And HBO was a part of it, ESPN, UFC, but the big one was Netflix. Netflix just churns it up. People love Netflix. So, and then Xbox Connect. Probably you've all seen Connect at some point. It was disruptive, kind of disruptive in the way like a stomachache disrupts you. It kind of comes and it goes and, actually not a stomachache, there's no pleasant side to a stomachache. A big meal. You first have the big meal, you enjoy it. As you can see, I'm always searching for a metaphor. But it didn't really, in the long run, have a huge impact on the world of gaming. There was never really kind of a killer experience against it. So when I think about industry pillars, and I think about the things to think about for the present and the future, it pretty much just breaks down into these. There's games. What are the games? What are the quality of the games? What are the platforms? What are the distribution models? What are the business models? And what are the experience models? And I think most things tend to fall into these areas. And we're seeing a lot of experimentation around distribution models. Business models, yes, but they don't tend to be experimented on by the big companies. They tend to be smaller companies. But what's interesting about this, at least from my perspective, is games drive all of these. It's always a great game or a great experience that drives a new business model. You don't try a new business model because, hey, this is how I can, I can now get my game this way versus that way, and so I'm going to go buy a game or download a game or episodically experience a game. It's because you want to play a game. So when somebody has something great and something new, that creates the emotional impetus to launch a new platform. They always say software sells hardware. And I know from my experience, we had a game when we were launching, God, a long time ago, the PlayStation 2. We spent 2 years, which at that time was a huge amount of time, to build a game called SSX to launch with the launch of PlayStation 2. And that involved spending a ton of time working with Sony in Japan. That spent a lot of time trying to do things people had never done in games before, both visually, gameplay-wise, audio-wise. But the cool part was that and a handful of other games helped define the launch of the platform. Without the really cool, new, innovative games, the platform wouldn't have been embraced as quickly as it was. And business models, well, we're seeing mobile drive a ton of new business models. Well, I shouldn't say new. I mean, free-to-play microtransaction is huge in mobile, but that didn't start in mobile. That started with a Korean company called Nexon, which I happened to work for a couple of years, who invented on the PC the free-to-play microtransaction model around games like MapleStory and Kart Rider, which were huge across Asia and have had a bit of an impact here, but that was a model that worked there. In the beginning, on the iPhone in the App Store, it was like $4.99 for a game. Okay, that's pretty cheap. I'm used to spending $50 or $10 or $20. And then all of a sudden, within about 9 months, it was 99 cents a game. I can remember because I just made my first iPhone app. And I thought I was going to be getting $4.99. And I thought everybody with an iPhone would buy it. I was wrong about all those things. And I always thought everybody wanted to be a DJ. It was a music mashup app. And listening to the end of John's talk, God, my brain just went to thinking about music rights, all the issues I've had around intellectual property rights over the years, and wow, not a fun world to live in. Although music, I have to say, compared to other forms of entertainment, is, by my experience, the most black and white, the most well protected. And even though there's mashup guys like Girl Talk, who will take everybody's song and create a new song, he can't do it legally. And he lives below the level of legal, and the record companies kind of turn an eye. But if he ever became so popular or tried to distribute his music through iTunes or through regular means, they would have to go in there and pummel him. But ours was a music mashup app where we used little loops of music and had to clear, the writers, had to clear the performers, had to do all the typical things, but it's well defined, except if it's a hip hop song. Because for the hip hop song, there's usually like 13 writers. It's whoever was in the room at the time. Like the guy who's delivering the food, he's in on there, and you got to track them all down. So on mobile, we probably all know what's there. It's really interesting on the free-to-play side how sophisticated some of the microtransaction models have become. I spent yesterday in San Francisco with a company it used to be called NGMoko, which is now DNA, part of a big Japanese mobile game company. And wow, just the sophistication of how they monitor their games. And their success is not that they have 1 million games that people play. They're not the biggest in that sense. Their success is they have a smaller number of people playing a smaller number of games, but they really know how to monetize those people. They really know how to track their games. And once a game is popular, I mean, they can get $7, $8 out of a user per day, which is just, to me, really amazing. And then advertising support, we're seeing a lot of that. But it's a really weird time around mobile because there's no consistency. You don't know. You get a game, it's free, you don't know if it's going to be free forever, if there's going to be a gate that says you can't play anymore till you pay, or if there's going to be microtransactions, or if there's going to be ads. It's kind of like we're all just, because it's kind of a relatively new medium, we're all just kind of rolling with it as users. And sometimes, for me, sometimes it bugs me, sometimes it doesn't. But what does bug me is if I pay for a game and then it tries to microtransact and or tries to advertise to me. And if there was somebody I could yell at, I would yell at them. But as we know, there's nobody to yell at. What? First time?
Excellent.
So just some trends I thought were interesting as I think about today and what could influence the future. Netflix is really interesting to me because I'm a movie freak. I go to the movie theater a lot. I rent movies on Apple TV. I rent movies through my Xbox. I consume a lot of TV. I watch a lot of HBO series, Showtime series, AMC series. I watch a lot of live sports. I really have actually no time to do any work because I really enjoy entertainment. But Netflix has always been a proposition about old movies. There's a hierarchical chain of licensing, and at the very bottom of it was Netflix. So theatrical, hotel and airplane pay-per-view, premium pay cable. You kind of move down through these, and then whoa, way at the bottom was Netflix because they paid the least, but they asked the least. And on average, a Netflix movie was usually anywhere from 2 to 4 years old, past theatrical, if it was ever theatrical. And the TV series as well were like that. And so I thought, well, who would want that? As it became a streaming service. But for $8 a month, which is what it was in the States, a lot of people are really happy with it. Because a lot of people don't go to the movie theaters. A lot of the people are like, wow, I haven't seen 40-Year-Old Virgin. And I'm like, really? Like, what decade is this? And you can always tell because somebody will say to you, wow, have you ever seen Dexter? It's like, yeah. I'm just starting it. Really? Like, where did you find that? Netflix. So what we've seen is there's a huge propensity, and I would say the majority of people aren't like me. They don't want to see it the day it comes out. They don't really care. What they care about is discovering it, and they're actually really excited because there's a ton of great shows they've never seen before, and now they're having an opportunity for those to surface. And because of, if you go down a few premium cable channels, I believe we're living in, I call it the platinum era of TV entertainment, because now they're all competing. And even Netflix has done 2 original series now. But you have these amazing series where the way it works pretty much, I've got a friend that's done his last 3 TV series for HBO, and the reason he always complains, he goes, I'm not rich like my friends because I do shows for HBO. And it's true. He makes a very nice living, but HBO says, okay, we'll put all of our money into production. We're not going to pay you as the creative producer a ton of money, but you can have a lot of creative freedom. You know, you can create, one of the first shows he did was 6 Feet Under, if you've ever seen that, or Rome, or his last one with Aaron Sorkin, Newsroom. You can't create shows like that on broadcast. I've had a little bit of experience working with broadcast TV. Imagine this meeting is me, and you're all the network executives, and you all want to participate in the creative process. And you all have opinions, and you all have a lot of fears, and you're going to just ruin my show. And that's pretty much the way it works. There's a reason why network TV is what network TV is. Except in Canada, it's amazing. There's that one with the plane and whatever I always see advertised on the airplanes. So iPad consumption and second screen, huge trend. I lump those together. They're not really together, but you know, we all who have iPads consume a lot of content. Or there's people that actually use it as their primary consumption device now. I've got a friend who's on the verge of separating from his wife because she comes to bed and boom, out comes the iPad. And they don't talk, she consumes. And it's just like, that didn't happen before. It's this thing that's with you anywhere you go, in the plane, in the kitchen. Kids, you know, my kids are all grown up, but I do notice a behavior. They don't care, they don't need to watch a big screen TV. They're really not interested in a big screen TV. They're interested in a personal experience where they can go wherever they want, whether it's laptop, whether it's iPad, they want to consume. And then the second screen behavior, that's one we're probably all familiar with, because watching TV itself is not interesting enough. We need to do other things while we watch TV. So sports has a ton of behaviors around it, but a lot of times it's related and other times it's not related. You know, people that are really into a show, we did a thing around True Blood when we did an ideation with HBO, and we sat and watched True Blood with big True Blood freaks. And they were all communicating with each other. Can you believe it? Did he do? Oh my God, you know, he's bad, no, he's good, you know, and it was like such a social part. It was social TV. It was really cool. And what was nice about it was most interactive behaviors that are awesome are things you already do. It just makes it better, or it allows it to be amplified in a way, because these behaviors were no different than if 4 of us were sitting on a couch watching it. But now people were able to share with people that weren't in the room with them, or people that didn't know, but they had a common passion with. So jump over smartphones. YouTube is really obvious. Consumption, massive, massive consumption of stuff that's not necessarily professionally produced. And it's stuff that can spread virally at an amazing, amazing rate. And it doesn't have to be, there is no format to it. It can be 30 seconds, or as we're starting to see now with some of the apps, it can be 6 seconds. It's not YouTube, but, or it can be, I watch a lot of TED Talks. You know, those are usually about 20 minutes. Or I watched the entire movie on YouTube about a week ago that I just stumbled across. What's cool about YouTube is it's a very new kind of discovery. There's a lot of happenstance. Even if you link to something, there's always that little row of things going, come on, watch me. Come on, over here. And I always I lose a lot of time to YouTube. Everything everywhere, well, that's a big trend. And what it is right now is it's an authentication business. So I can watch my TV shows, or in the case of ESPN, which we did a lot of work with, I can watch ESPN on my iPad, I can watch it on my laptop, I can watch it on my TV, I can watch it at my friend's house, but at the end of the day, you have to subscribe. So with them, the anchor is I've got a cable subscription. And the big pivot that's going to happen sometime in the future, this happens with HBO, this happens with all of them. We wanted to have the opportunity for somebody who didn't have cable to be able to be on Xbox Live and say, wow, I want to watch this. They might be watching episode by episode of True Blood. And we said, what if they love it so much they want to subscribe to HBO? Can't they just subscribe through Xbox Live? Easy to do. They want more subscribers. The problem is they're very, very afraid of pissing off the people who they're partnered with on their existing business model, and that's the cable operators. So a lot of these people are really afraid to do that. And they won't right now. But at some point, they were all afraid of a thing called the cable cutter. Person that has cable, they're going to cancel cable, and they're going to start doing stuff like this. Well, the truth is they don't need to worry about the cable cutter. What they need to do is worry about people in the room here. I'm guessing there's a lot of you that don't have cable. So it's not the cutters, it's people who've never had it. You know, when I was your rough, I'm going to average your ages. When I was roughly your average age, my hierarchy of how I had to spend money, cable was probably like number 4. It's pretty high up. You know, there was no internet. I'm not even sure there was a cell phone bill. You know, there was rent, there was food. Cable was way the heck up there, and the research I've looked at, it's like it's down here. You know, it's after beer. Way after beer. And that's in the U.S. In the U.S. Actually, the best thing I saw out of doing some in-home research with somebody was we're talking about people illegally downloading, and somebody said, "Well, I can download an album for $10, but I also have a way to download it for free. I can go buy a 6-pack of beer," this is in the US, "for $7. I don't know how to get beer for free." I thought, all right, that pretty much sums it up for me. I fully understood it. And lastly on this list is Kickstarter. Kickstarter, world changer. It's allowing creators to speak directly with audiences. Now, it's not a platform, it's a means to an end. It's a way to get things off the ground and going. But what's most important about it is I've been spending time with some venture capitalists down in the Bay Area, and they love it because it validates whether there's an audience that wants something. You know, you launch something. I don't know if you're familiar with the company IDEO. There's a guy called David Kelly who's the founder of IDEO, and I've been spending time with him, and he's the founder of the D School at Stanford. And he said, I don't grade my students' projects anymore. They put them on Kickstarter. And we let the audience decide whether they want to invest or not. And that, in fact, is their grade. We define our grade by whether or not the audience is responding to it. So it's not just the ability to raise money. You know, there's things like Ouya, the new gaming platform, that raised $8.5 million. So to the venture capitalists who are then investing in it, they look at it and they go, wow, there were people at 99 bucks each willing to, in the aggregate, put up $8.5 million to give this thing a vote of confidence. That says there's an audience out there that's interested in this thing. It's not just giving it a financial birth, it's giving it commercial validation before it even exists. Or at least the concept of it, the promise of it, is successfully doing that. The future. This is weird looking up here. I kind of feel like a Herbert Matter poster. I was really intrigued by concept of derivative rights and things you were fringing on there. I spent a lot of time in the past there. I worked for Swatch Watch a long time ago, and we did a few watch designs that we tried to say were derivative work, and courts had a different opinion. And I had a Swiss boss, and I used to name all the watches, but every now and then he'd come in with one, and we had an all black watch, black numbers, black face, black case. And it was this, and he had a great Swiss accent. This must be the Dark Vader. I can't call it the Dark Vader. He goes, no, not Darth Vader, Dark Vader. I go, I know. Yeah, so he insisted, and we got a call very quickly from the people at George Lucas's company. So what's the future? Okay, I'm taking the easy way out here. It's all the things I said before, but with the word new in front of them. Huh? But it's true. It's really true. The one thing I did learn is it's hard to introduce a new experience that has more than one of these things with the word new in front of them. So at Microsoft, we were experimenting a lot with new business models where I might buy a game episodically. But at the same time, the game idea we had was a new experience model, because the way you experienced it, because it was episodic, and the way parts of it and whole gameplay things unfolded were new. And as soon as you got more than one new thing, people started getting confused. And the value of what was great and new about it, as much as I like innovation probably more than most people, I really started to understand that your chances of being absorbed cleanly and enthusiastically into the market get harder and harder the more revolutionary you become versus evolutionary. So I always think of it as legs on the stool. You know, if you change one leg on the stool, that's evolutionary. You're giving somebody a new way to do something, and but they get the rest of it, right? Like if I have a first-person shooter, and I play it with my friends and all that's the same, but now it comes out a level a week at a time. Okay, that's a new business model. It's not really, well, if it's downloaded, it's a new distribution model. I can get my head around that. Whether I want to play it or not is a different idea, but there's enough there I understand that I can kind of understand what it is that's new and then evaluate what the value of that is to me. Oh, I was doing so good. So just some things that popped up. I've been sort of writing things down for the last week in mental preparation. So one of the things I came around to, and this is the reason I've pinged Netflix a bit, just like a good episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's all going to come full circle, or at least 10% of it. And I thought, what is the Netflix of gaming? Like, part of the challenge for the gaming console business is they sell these things for 50 bucks, they have a shelf life for a certain number of months, and then they get discounted down to half price, and then they're gone. Like, what's the value today of FIFA 9? It's nothing. It doesn't have a place in the market. It's useless. And if somebody can figure out a way to say, okay, here's all this stuff. This is what Netflix did. Here's all this stuff. We're the bottom tier. We're the bottom tier of distribution. We're at the point where people don't expect to make any more money off their product, their games, their movies. We're going to offer it out to anybody. Imagine if there were a Netflix of gaming on a console or somewhere where I could go play games 2 years and older, and I paid $8 a month, and I could, you know, in any given month have 100 of them available. That might be an interesting trend. So one of the things I do believe in is most of the time people don't make up business models or sometimes distribution models. They tend to migrate. Like I said earlier about microtransaction, free-to-play microtransaction. That didn't happen on mobile. You know, that happened with Nexon, and then that happened in the PC world. So could this one migrate? The idea of games everywhere, the idea of I buy a game on my pad and it can show up on my console and it can show up on my phone. That's got promise, but I think what any good game designer will tell you is to be really successful, it's not going to be the same experience on each platform. They're going to be complementary experiences. So for me, the future there is really complementary games everywhere. Free-to-play microtransaction on consoles, I think that's got to happen. It almost happened a few years ago. Microsoft was going to do it. They actually wanted to get this Korean game Cartrider onto there. But when the people who were responsible for Xbox Live Arcade looked at that, and they said, wow, your game is better than our games, and your game's free. That's going to be a problem. So again, it's letting go of the old model to see if there's enough value in bringing in something new and different. Connected digital events, this 1 versus 100 TV show was an example of that. I think we're going to start to see new things where people are connecting in massive numbers live, where you have, whether it's a music festival, whether it's a sporting event, whether it's a game, but it's not the idea, and even the game show didn't do it that well, but when you actually start to feel like you're participating in something in a moment at the same time as everybody else, there's going to be something powerful there. And I think there's experimentation going on there, and we'll have to see where that goes. Is there a YouTube of games? I have no clue. I put that up there with absolutely no idea what the answer was. But I think that idea of user-generated opportunities, things without a heavy investment to get in and try, and the opportunity for virality. There is a bridge to something I'll mention in a second. And new devices. There's always new devices. So current opportunities for disruption, getting towards the end here. Does anybody know what this is? I didn't either. Steambox. So this is their prototype, Valve's actual prototype around the idea of a Steambox, which is, you know, squish down, powerful PC, put it in my living room, and I can access, you know, a ton of games the same way I do through Valve now, either digital download or playing through the cloud. So this would be a portal, and the idea here would be, you know, instead of the traditional console games, these are games being made for the PC. like Valve currently distributes through Steam. Interesting idea, could be very powerful because you can play in the living room now with a controller, big screen TV. You know, you can buy a giant big screen TV for $500 now. It's a pretty amazing experience. The challenge there, PC games are getting more and more niche. You know, they're getting deeper, wilder, speaking to kind of the same audience, at least on the, you know, the hardcore side, the core side. And I don't think it's a broad play, but I think it's a very powerful play to somebody that really cares about those kind, you know, if you can remember levels from Half-Life, this is probably something really interesting, but it probably also cost $500 to $600. Don't know how many of you have seen the Oculus Rift. It's kind of being heralded as the first workable VR system, and they raised, I think, about $1.5 million through Kickstarter. I think they were trying to get 250,000. They kind of overshot their goal. And they've got a bunch of game developers who are saying this is a really cool thing. Again, I think it's a bit of a niche play. Is it going to change a mainstream world? Maybe it's a stepping stone to it, but I've actually been able to interact with a variety of VR experiences, some pretty good. And it is really wild and immersive, but there's nothing casual about it. So it may start with hardcore and move wide, and I think this probably has the best chance of breaking through. And Ouya, which I mentioned earlier, I'm just out of curiosity, how many of you are familiar with Ouya? Okay, well this is the one I actually believe will be a game changer. And the reason I think this is a game changer is this could do to living room platform gaming kind of what iOS and now Android's done to mobile gaming, where the barriers to entry are so low that anybody can make a game who has programming or art skills. This will sell for $99. They just start, actually will ship them at the end of this month. And it's all based on the Android platform. So if you can make an iPhone game for Android, you can make a console game for the living room. And they set it up so the rev share is 70% of the money that comes in goes to the developer, which is pretty cool. And I think, I've met with these people a few times, and I wouldn't be surprised in a few years that all the game schools are starting to use this for development and building projects. It's going to allow people with wacky ideas to make games, you know, without, you know, kind of like we've seen on in the iPhone world. But this is going to be for the living room. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes, but you know, I've used it, I've looked at some of the games already on it, and I'm really hopeful for it. It's not, you're not going to see the next Call of Duty on it. But I think visual fidelity, I kind of think of it the same way. I think a lot of people don't care about big screen TVs to watch a TV show. I think certain kinds of games where, as long as the gameplay is really fun and the interaction model is fresh and innovative, people will gravitate towards it. One won't replace the other, but I think one can grow, and maybe the other one shrinks. So this is something I think has a lot of possibility. And kind of just to recap a bit of this, things that stood out for me is, I do believe it's important to pay attention to cool, interesting business models you see anywhere. They don't have to be in games, they don't have to be in entertainment. I mean, I borrowed one way back in my EA days from a rental car company in Europe I happened to stumble across. And it's like, wow, this really works well. How do we bring this to games? So they can come from anywhere and they can migrate. And that's important because if you find an easier way with less friction that has more value to the user, you're bound to succeed. Another thing which is always interesting to remember is today's big companies were once small. And when I started at EA, it was fairly small. And I watched how it grew and became what it became. And you look at some of the small companies now, I'll use Ouya as an example, where you think these could become very important companies in the future of gaming. And I don't know enough to predict that one, but I think it's interesting to think about who are the people that seem to be lined up correctly and who are thinking about the right groups of people. The other part is trends. This is the value of being really old. I've been able to see that trends are cyclical. They don't always come back the way they did, but The same way I spoke moments ago with conviction about big screens not being so important, that could completely change in 5 years. Because people move away from something, they're always looking for new experiences. And as they start to come back into their life, they come back in new and unusual ways. So just because something, and I find the things that I happen to be passionate about, I always wonder, like, can this come back? And a lot of them do in new and interesting ways. I see it a lot in music and film and even in games. Not so much for roller disco and ballet skiing, but I don't think those are coming back. Roller disco I'm still holding out for because that was really awesome. People want to feel connected. This will never change. This is why a game like MapleStory is so amazingly popular, because instead of playing a game alone, people just cohabitate with other live human beings. And in the research we did around that, they don't even interact with the people a lot of time. It's just the fact they're in an environment with other living real people. And it's a sad truth, but because of the way our society is, people aren't connecting in the same way. There's not the same sense of community on a physical, how we live basis for most people. So people search for that. It's an innate need. They search for that through things like Facebook. People don't want to feel untethered. And I think gaming is always going to be a major way people connect into that. World of Warcraft, you know, through the whole MMO experience, brought us a whole bunch of new ways to do it, where people who didn't even have interest in that kind of genre and experience gravitated towards it because it allowed them to feel connected to other people. So never underestimate that. The idea of new platforms creating new opportunities, it's true, and it usually doesn't come from the platform people themselves. It comes from somebody figuring out a new way to use it. That's why I pay attention to what's coming out, but I haven't yet seen where the possible potential sweet spot of what this next generation, although Ouya versus, I was more excited about Ouya than PlayStation 4, and I wouldn't have guessed that before I saw it. But, and old platforms create new opportunities. This is one that isn't obvious to most people. Most companies move away from old platforms really quick and go to the new platform. But if you think about it, you got a platform with 80 million users, and you got a new one with 1 million users. This is exciting. There's still 80 million people over here who could buy what you're making. And it may not be at the same price point. They may be more Netflixy than they are movie theater, but there's tons of opportunity. And new ideas actually have sprung up late in the cycle, or new ways of distribution, or new ways of packaging things. So don't always dismiss the old to go for the new. And lastly, a lower bar to entry just creates more innovation and more opportunity. And that's something we've seen. I mean, when I first saw the iPhone, when they opened the App Store, and I had this idea for Music Mashup app, there's no way I ever would have made that thing. It was an idea I'd had for a couple of years, but now I had a really easy way to do it for a small amount of money, so I could. And I think more mobile experiences, more pad experiences, more things like Ouya, where creators can, with 1 or 2 or 3 people, instead of 100 people, can create an idea. And even things like Kickstarter, where that idea wants to become a little bit larger. I mean, I'm amazed. I don't know how much you pay attention. It's like a hobby for me now, but I just invested, which you don't really invest, but in this lady that makes cat calendars. And she's got this cat, and she dresses him up in different outfits and takes photos. And it's grown year on year, and you know, I committed my whatever, $30, and I get a calendar, and I get something else. But I wanted to support that because I thought it was a cool idea, and I loved her passion. And her video for it was really awesome. And she has a way of connecting. There's no gatekeeper, there's no network, there's no publisher. And yeah, I mean, this may not be the cat calendar, the next giant mainstream thing. I don't believe it is. But somebody with an amazing idea can get to an audience without all the encumbrance that used to exist. And that is an amazing thing around creating potential innovation. So that's it. I don't know if you have any questions or even if we have time, but.
We don't really have time. Is there any quick questions? So thank you to Steve for an awesome talk. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you for being awesome. Very much looking forward to your papers. Take care.